Hello everybody, this is a video on how to refurbish a color drum for your digital printer. This video will be focusing on the Docucolor 240 by Xerox. It's the 240, 250, 252 series. While this is specifically for Xerox Docucolor, keep in mind that the principles of how these machines operate is about the same. So while the parts might look slightly different, if you're courageous enough to open up one of these and look through it, you should be just fine. So you'll see here I have laid out all the items you'll need with the exception of this. This is a wet dry vac that I have, a powerful vacuum. I like using wet dry vac because I can also put a HEPA filter on there. A HEPA filter will actually hopefully catch all the fine particles of the toner that you definitely don't want flying in the air. The last thing you want to use when you're cleaning is something like this, because this will blow it in the air and you'll breathe it in, and the stuff is well, shoot, for legal purposes I can't really, in my opinion, it may be toxic. I do not know that for a fact. I am not saying factually it's toxic, but you definitely don't want to blow it into the air. Use a wet dry vac with a HEPA filter to filter out anything you have. Over here I have a rubber rejuvenator. This one happens to be a Mark Yale brand. This is the one I've only used, but I'm sure there's not very much difference between the other brands as well. You'll need a screwdriver, you'll need a wet rag, you'll need a dry rag. I have this adhesive remover because sometimes crud gets on these drums, and these drums, while they are photosensitive, they are very resistant. They can seem to tolerate chemicals very well. I've used this on them, and anytime before I started taking them apart, I would spray the rollers while the drum is still on there, and it just doesn't do anything to it. They're very resistant, chemically speaking. Of course, not with acids, but they are supposedly photosensitive. I've kept these out in the sun. Not in the sun. The sun would probably destroy them. I've kept these on in indoor light for quite a while, and they don't seem to have any degradation in their ability to transfer toner onto the transfer belt. So I think maybe they mentioned that a little overcautiously and might be a little overzealous about that. But anyway, let's begin. We're going to go ahead and remove only this end. There's no reason to remove this end. I don't remove this end because there's also a chip in there, and this little piece can be difficult to put back in. This is a connection that goes in the machine. You can see it's metal, so it probably delivers some kind of electrical charge. So we're going to remove this end because it's less complicated. The screw is right there, so I'm just going to take a screwdriver and take out this screw. One of the other items I forgot to mention that you need is a box to hold all your pieces. Don't be intimidated by all the pieces in there. They're just repetitive pieces, extra pieces that I have from previous drums that I've taken apart. So this end cap will come off. Whoops. And as you notice, see, there's toner everywhere in these things. This is a ring. These are the rings that you use to pull the drums out of the machine. So we're going to put that back as well. For now, let's go into this pile. This we're going to clean out. Now, what we have here is this little end piece just comes right off, and you'll notice that there is an area that is a deep end and a shallow end. When you put it back in, you always put it in shallow end first. See how that line is right there? So that's what I mean by shallow, because that's a smaller and that's a deeper. So the deeper's on top, shallow goes in the bottom. When you put it back in, you put it in like that. So let's take that piece out. There's this ring here that enables the drum to rotate within this housing. So we'll go ahead and take that out. And then we're going to take the drum out. So what I typically like to do is like to press from this end as well as pull from this end, because it can be tricky sometimes to pull out. Now, when you have this out, you'll want to examine it and see exactly why you're having print issues, because sometimes you can actually salvage these. Like, for example, this one, if you look at it, it looks like to be in pretty good condition until we come to here. So this is an old drum that I had from a long time ago when I wasn't as careful with my machines as I am now, and you'll notice something managed to scratch it here and just essentially, destroy the drum. So you want to make sure if you start seeing any scratch marks on that, you address it immediately. You look inside the machine and see what might be causing that. I don't recall what did this at this time, so please don't ask. Maybe in a future video I'll remember. You always look at this end as well. Sometimes these ends can break, and if that happens, what happens is when you put your drum into the machine, this will not be able to turn because there's a gear that turns this. So you'll notice that when you do prints, suddenly one entire a drum color is missing, like your yellow or your magenta or cyan, whichever drum where this is broken off. Here I have an example of one that says broken off. So when I was trying to use this and I print a full color image, suddenly there was no yellow or there was no cyan. It was that's the reason. And sometimes it seems to it'll come up with, and that did generate a fault code, by the way, Xerox fault code. I don't recall the number right now, but it's easy just change out the color drum and you'll be fine. And sometimes these also can generate errors because if this is gouged enough, it might not send the right signal to the computer to the computer, yeah, sure, computer, and then it'll create an error and a fault code as well. So anyway, this will go ahead and change for the time being. If you do have this and you see this on the drum and you really only do like 8.5 by 11 pieces, especially if it's short edge first, you don't really have to worry about it because the damage is right up here to the drum. But if you're doing full sheets that are 13 by 19 or 12 by 18, you'll definitely see these. So you will want to change it out. So let's continue before I bring a new drum out to show you how we take this apart and clean it thoroughly. So you'll have your roller over here. That just pulls out. There's something that holds it right here, and just typically just snap it in. You hear that click? That just clicks in very easily and comes out exactly as easily as well. If you've used your drum a lot, there will be lots of toner in here. I cleaned this out previously because I didn't want it to be messy while I was doing this video. So it might have toner on it. Also might show some white spots on it or white streaks, just showing that the roller has aged a little bit. But that's what this wonderful stuff is for, this rubber rejuvenator. I use it on the rubber rollers in the machine. I use it on these. I just take it and I spray it on one side, then turn it, spray it on the other, and then typically I take like a wet rag, I pinch it on both sides just with 2 fingers, and I just clean it like this, and I twirl it while I clean it, and I just go all the way down, and then after that's done, I go ahead and use a dry rag, and just light pressure, just enough. You just want it to pick up the excess moisture on there. But again, you don't want to wash all of this off, but you just want to kind of spread it around. That's why I did say wet rag. I should have said damp rag. You don't want it dripping wet. So assuming you've done that, you've sprayed it down and taken care of. Now we need to go ahead and deal with this. When you open this up, if it's a color drum you used for quite a while, this will be full of toner. Right now it has just a little bit because I used it once before I did this video, so show a little bit of toner and show you all the parts you need to clean. So now we go on to this part right here. We go ahead and just twist it slightly and then pull it out. And when you put it back in, you do have to do the same thing at a little bit of an angle to get it in that little slot. Again, we're just going to remove one end, so I'm just going to leave that dangling there. Try not to pull it too far off because then you will break it. And then we're going to go ahead and take these screws out. One screw over here, again put it in your box, and one screw over here, and again put it in your box. Now this metal piece, there's three things actually I want to show you about it. So on this metal piece you have this thin mylar blade where you see all the toner on right here. Then you have this silicone blade that's significantly thicker as well. You'll want to take again your wet rag and just clean this. And I say wet rag because you don't want a dry rag, because then it will just fly in the air and you'll breathe it in, and that won't be great, as opposed to this holds onto the toner. It seems to toner seems to hold on to moisture pretty well, so it's attracted to the rag. See, now that's a lot cleaner, it looks better. If you're going to put this thing apart, pull this thing apart, we may as well clean it out really well, because this toner will just add up over time. And then I like to really take like a finger and get in that edge real deep there between the mylar and the silicone and clean it out. So you see how that looks a lot better. Then what you'll have is the housing. Now with the housing, I promised you 3 things. So you have the silicone blade, the mylar blade, which is much thinner, and then this foam right here. If you take this off, and this foam has degraded like it has in this one, see how that's completely fallen apart? Now there's no foam there. So now what's the problem is that you have this metal sitting on bits where foam is completely degraded or is no foam whatsoever, and this foam pretty much acts as a block to the toner when it aerosols and spreads into the air. It pretty much stops it right here. So without this, it's going to get into your machine, get onto your prints, onto everything. So if when you take this apart, you're looking at something like this, then just throw this in recycling and you've done all you can with it. I wouldn't bother trying to save that. It's just going to contaminate your machine. So great. So we've got this. I again take my wet rag. Actually, no, sorry. What I would do before I even took this blade off is I would vacuum it. I forgot to do that because, again, I don't have it as clean. So while this blade is on, I just take the vacuum. I like to hold one end of it closed when I vacuum like this and then put it against the actual machine because it provides more suction and gets it. So I would vacuum this out. There's a little, this is where it goes into the waste toner container. It sucks it out of here. You'll see a little hole right boop, there. See, that little hole right there. So I typically put the vacuum right up against there and suck every last little bit of toner out of there. And then once I've done vacuuming all of that, that's when I take my wet rag and I go against, there's another Mylar blade here. So I go ahead and grab that blade with both fingers and pinch it between the two of them and slide the rag all the way down to get whatever toner's in there. And then I also get it in the little housing area here. Now the toner is moved into the end of this, which will then be sucked into the waste toner cartridge. And there's an auger that moves it. You'll see that auger right there. If you really want to do a thorough cleaning, you can take this end out off of here and then pull this entire blade out, see? And then what I typically do is I take this, I shove it into the wet dry vac hose like this, hold onto it really tight while I turn it on. And it'll clean the whole thing off well enough, good enough for what we're trying to accomplish today anyway. And then you put this sucker back in that hole right there. Oops, make sure it lines up. And it goes all the way down. You have to spin it a little bit to get it all the way back down. And then this cap, may as well clean that, right? We've got it open. Why not clean off that last bit of toner? That looks a little better, yeah? And then we put this back on. Now, there's a slight little notch right there. So you want to line up this little notch in this thing with that. And so it sits flat against this little cylinder, see? Right there. So now that's good to go. So once we've got that there, we go ahead and put this back in. After we've cleaned out that housing and all the toner, as much of it as possible, we put our screws back in. This is part of the video. You can fast forward if you want, because we all know how to use a screwdriver, I hope. That's it. Yep. So there we go. Both screws are back in there. We take the roller. We put it in here. Now we're ready for our new color drum. So there are drums that you can order online inexpensively rather than getting the entire piece. So this is one that I ordered off a vendor. I'll put a list of vendors where you can get these supplies once I figure out which vendors are probably the most reputable, and maybe even some vendors are willing to throw a little money my way. I don't know. So we'll see. If I do list them, I'd appreciate you using them, and maybe I will get reimbursed for this effort. So here we are, a nice new color drum. I'm looking at it right now. There seems to be something here I don't like. Like, I don't know if you can catch it with that light, but there's one like line, thick line there. So I'm just going to wipe this down with my wet cloth, and it still seems to be there. But it seems to be faint enough that it might not show. So anytime you order supplies, make sure you just double check, have a look at them immediately. You know, if you're ordering entire drums, I would just use the drums immediately. Just test them out as soon as you get them, just to make sure they're in good condition. So we slip this back in. Again, this is the end that goes into the machine over here, where the gear turns. So the black end is the part that goes into the machine when you shove everything in, and this is the side that's on the outer edge of that drawer when you put it in. So we're going to slide that all the way in there. Now we're going to go ahead, clip first. You want to put this clip in first, not this ring. So again, like I said, what end goes in? The shallow end. So that's the shallow end right there. Wait, this is the wrong side. Nope, that's the wrong side. That's the clip from the other. Here we go. So this is the shallow end and that's the deep end. So you put the shallow end in first. That goes in just fine like that. Now, that's when we put in this ring. So when we put in the ring, just snap it. Whoops, let me put this back in there. Snap it into place. You have to be a little firm with this. So I also like when I'm doing it to move this up a little bit so I can get it all the way in. So you see how I just moved that cylinder up? It enables me to get this more solidly on there. And even then, sometimes I still have to take a screwdriver and try to force it in a little further so that it gets all the way in, because you want this cap to be perfectly flush once you put it on. So I did say, let's clean this. So let's clean that out a little bit. I can't get all of it, and for this video time, I don't want to bother being that detail oriented. Here's your finger ring again. And then the cap goes on. Just look at how it's formed. See, sorry, here's your finger. I didn't realize off camera. Here's the finger ring again. And then here's the cap that goes on. So there we go. See how it's perfectly flush there? If there's any gap whatsoever, then that means you didn't get this ring in tight enough. So try to get that ring in tighter. So let's put that cap on, grab the last screw, and put this screw on over here. Now remember, I told you to open up this end, not the other end, because the other end has many more parts to it and it gets a little more complicated. One of those being there's a chip in there, and if you open it up too quickly and take the top off too fast, that chip will fall out and you won't be able to tell which side the chip was supposed to be in on. Whoops, see, I screwed this up already. Here we go, let's take that out again. But see, it's not flush. This is not something that's going to work right there. So I don't know why this did that, but let's take this apart again. And let's see why it's not fitting flush. That's all the way down. This is all the way down. That's all the way down now. And it's flush. Okay. So if by some chance you did take the other end off and a chip fell out, and you didn't listen to what I told you to do, and now you're writing me, it's like, oh, Mr. Mario, blah, 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 where's the chip? What do I do? Which way does the chip go in? I've got you covered because at the very least you're adventurous. So if you took the wrong end off, or the more adventurous end off, the chip, when you put it back in, sits in this little area right here with these 4 dots that connect somehow. And then you also have this pin here. This goes back in here. There's probably the ring that you have to make sure you put on the other end of the cylinder. But the most important thing I want to show you is this chip. There's this metal piece right here that sends an electrical charge through it. That goes there. And it's also difficult because the way it connects to this piece here, it's got like just don't open up this end. Okay, if you do, that's as much I'm going to do for you. That's it. Just listen to me. Don't open up this end. So yeah, so now we have the drum all put together. It looks great. This is nice and closed on this end. The drum looks pretty good, and now you can test it. So that's about it, guys. I hope you found this helpful. Like I said, if I find suppliers that can give you a good deal on these items, this is an adhesive remover. Like I said, sometimes you might have crud on there. Just kind of squirt that on there. It'll help you remove whatever crud is stuck on there. And the rubber rejuvenator is a savior. But yeah, that's it. I'll let you know if I find a place that has good drums for a good value. And these rollers, these rubber rollers, they sell them as well, but really you can rejuvenate them. It's like they can last a lot longer than what they're looking at. So yeah, roll it a few times, make sure there's any excess toner, just get it off, because there's no reason to have more toner on there than you need before you put it back in your machine. I hope this was helpful. You guys are the best. If you have any questions, you can always ask me below. If I have time, I'll be happy to answer them, if I know the answer to them. Oh, so sorry. There was somebody who posted a question on one of my other videos, and they said that it was there was magenta toner everywhere. Again, remember, this reservoir in this thing that holds a toner is not that deep. It's not going to be able to hold that much, and once it gets full, it's going to spew it everywhere. So that may have been the problem. I don't know. They said that they had changed the cartridges. I don't know if they changed it with an old one. I don't know if they got it from a disreputable vendor who didn't clean it sufficiently. But always check that housing where I found all the toner that you saw. I hope this video was helpful. Again, thanks for watching, and have a great day. Good luck.